England's industrial heart once powered a nation. Today, in former mining towns, unemployment still lingers 40% above the national average, and life expectancy gaps now reach nearly 9 years. How did the miners' strike break England's backbone so completely? Was this collapse inevitable, or the result of deliberate demolition? The answer changes everything we thought we knew. Barnsley's high street lies mostly silent now. Its boarded-up shops and shuttered pubs, a stark reminder of what has vanished. In Blaenau, Gwent, the job center queue snakes past empty terraces, while the old pit head stands rusting behind a chain-link fence. 40 years after the last shift, unemployment in these districts sits up to 40% above the national average, according to the latest ONS data. In Easington, the figure climbs even higher, and the faces waiting outside the food bank are younger than ever. The numbers tell only part of the story. In former mining towns, life expectancy is nearly 9 years lower than in affluent areas just a few hours down the motorway. Grandfathers once came home blackened but proud, earning a union wage that kept the lights on in every house on the street. Today, a 0-hour contract at the nearest warehouse pays £8,000 less per year in real terms than a miner's wage did in the early 1980s. Children walk past faded scab graffiti on red-bricked rows, their futures measured out in months on the dole. In some places, even the playground swings have been taken down. Too many accidents, too few kids. The landscape itself seems to mourn, with derelict colliery buildings and empty social clubs standing witness to a loss that statistics alone cannot explain. The question lingers in the silence. Was this collapse an accident of history, or the result of decisions made far from here? In the 1970s, coal was not just fuel, but the lifeblood of entire regions. The National Union of Mineworkers stood at the center of this world, its influence reaching far beyond the pit head. In towns from South Yorkshire to South Wales, the union's word could fill a stadium, halt a train, or decide the fate of a government. The winter of 1974 proved this power beyond doubt. Ted Heath, the sitting prime minister, called a snap election with a single question: who governs Britain? The miners answered in picket lines and mass meetings, forcing rolling blackouts and bringing industry to a crawl. When the votes were counted, Heath was out, and the miners' victory echoed through Parliament and every working-class kitchen. This was more than a wage dispute. It was a demonstration that organized labor, when united, could bend the state itself. At its height, the National Union of Mineworkers counted nearly 250,000 members, each one part of a culture built around hard work, mutual aid, and a fierce sense of belonging. Coal was woven into daily life. Pay packets spent at local shops, brass bands leading parades, union banners hanging in every club. The pit was the anchor, the union the shield. For a generation, miners moved as one, their strength visible in every closed gate and silent conveyor belt. Governments learned to tread carefully, knowing that a single call from the union could plunge the nation into darkness. The memory of that power lingered, shaping every calculation in Whitehall for the decade to come. Cabinet papers from the early 1980s reveal a government moving quietly but methodically to prepare for confrontation. The so-called Ridley Plan, circulated among conservative ministers in 1977, laid out a blueprint: stockpile coal, retrofit power stations to run on oil, restrict benefits for strikers' families, and ensure the police could be mobilized across county lines at a moment's notice. By 1981, the National Coal Board ledgers show coal stockpiles at power stations climbing past 9 million tons, enough to keep the lights on for half a year without a single miner underground. Technical logs from the Central Electricity Generating Board record the conversion of key plants to dual-fuel operation, quietly reducing the country's dependence on coal. Personnel changes at the top signaled the seriousness of intent. Ian McGregor, brought in from British Steel with a reputation for union busting, took over as National Coal Board chairman in 1983. Walter Marshall, a nuclear advocate, assumed control of the Central Electricity Generating Board the same year. These appointments were not accidental, they were the operational wing of a broader strategy. Home Office memos from 1983 detail plans for police deployment on an unprecedented scale, with overtime budgets, barracks accommodation, and transport contracts already in place before the first picket assembled. The National Recording Centre coordinated cross-force mobilization, ensuring that officers from London or Manchester could be sent into South Yorkshire or South Wales within hours. Treasury briefings calculated the cost of a year-long strike and budgeted for it. Even the Social Security Act of 1980 was quietly amended to cut off support to striking families, a measure recommended years earlier in the Ridley Report. Each of these steps, stockpiling, retrofitting, legal maneuvering, and strategic appointments, formed a paper trail pointing to a government not merely bracing for a strike, but engineering its own advantage before the first confrontation began. On the 6th of March 1984, the National Coal Board announced the immediate closure of 20 pits. The news swept through mining towns like a shock wave. Within days, nearly 170,000 miners walked out, refusing to accept the loss of their livelihoods. Picket lines formed at dawn, stretching for miles outside collieries and coking plants. The government's months of preparation became visible overnight. Police in unfamiliar uniforms arrived by the busload, their numbers swelling as officers from London and Manchester joined local forces. By mid-June, the conflict reached its breaking point at Orgreave, a sprawling coking works outside Rotherham. More than 5,000 pickets gathered at the gates, determined to halt the movement of coke to steelworks. Facing them were over 6,000 police, many mounted, some in riot gear, drawn from across England. The air was tense, brittle with anticipation. Then the order came. Mounted police surged forward, truncheons raised, scattering pickets across the fields. Stones flew, shields clattered, and the ground churned with running feet. 95 miners were arrested that afternoon, their faces bloodied and their arms twisted behind their backs. The aftermath played out in courtrooms and on television screens. Trials collapsed as it became clear that police statements did not match the footage or each other. Evidence had been fabricated, testimonies rehearsed. No officers faced prosecution. Now, Orgreave entered the national memory as a day when the state's power was laid bare, overwhelming, coordinated, and unanswerable. For the miners, it was proof that the rules had changed. The law was no longer a shield, but a weapon. The strike would grind on for months, but the balance had shifted. The cost of resistance was now measured in broken bodies and criminal records. Police vans lined the roads outside pit villages, their presence constant and unyielding. Officers from distant counties patrolled the streets, enforcing curfews and breaking up gatherings. Local men found themselves singled out for arrest, over 11,000 by the strike's end. Department of Health and Social Security files confirm a new policy. If one family member joined the picket, every dependent lost their benefit. The rules were enforced without exception. Soon, the only support came from hastily organized relief centers, many run by miners' wives. One woman, her husband out since March, spent her days collecting tins and loaves from sympathetic neighbors, assembling food parcels to feed the children on her street. Charity records from Yorkshire and South Wales show the number of parcels tripled in a single month. Hunger, once unthinkable in these proud communities, became a daily fact of life. A retired general practitioner in Barnsley keeps a ledger of names. Patients who once came in with cuts and sprains, now arriving for antidepressants and blood pressure pills. In his notes, the change is clear. After the pits closed, depression and heart disease surged, and each year brought more cases of alcohol dependency. National Health Service cohort studies confirm the pattern. Rates of chronic illness and mental health problems in former coal fields far outstrip the national average. By 1994, 169 pits had shut, erasing 170,000 jobs. Warehouse shifts and agency work replaced the old certainties. but pay is £8,000 lower in real terms than a miner's wage in 1983. In Easington, a third-generation worker clocks in at an Amazon depot, earning less than his grandfather did underground. Life expectancy in his town is 8.7 years shorter than in Surrey. For many, precarity is no longer a phase. It is the only reality they have ever known. Today's gig economy, where zero-hour contracts outnumber secure jobs, stands on ground once defended by miners. As collective bargaining weakens and regional divides deepen, the lesson endures. When the state breaks solidarity, precarity becomes policy. The real cost isn't just economic, it's the erosion of power, dignity, and hope.